Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at the Endwalker promotional site. Now, leading up to the launch of the expansion, they do this for patches as well. They post little tidbits of information just to hype people up. We normally get a little bit more insight into the lore. Sometimes we get a little bit more insight into the content that's going to be in Endwalker, but for the most part, it just ends up being a fun little thing to look at with some new screenshots, and of course, this fancy on sale now trailer in the background start screen that we have going here. So if you ever want to know more or curious about the things that are coming in the expansion, then the site here is always a good place to start. Starts with the latest expansion. So I almost read that as last, which is, people have tainted my mind. They're just like, oh no, is this the end? And it's like, no, it's not. It's not the last expansion. Stop it. Warrior of Light, bear forth our hope that these days may not be the last. In fact, we don't want them to be the last. That's it. Yet, shadowed by their triumph on the first, the Warrior of Light and the Signs of the Seventh Dawn are home at last. An even greater calamity than refulgent oblivion has been building in their absence. However, a second advent of the final days. Should all despair, the myriad conflicts that now ravage the land cannot but foretoken an end to life in the source. Man, sometimes I feel like Urian J writes this stuff. Take heart in the faith, those who walk beside you. And then here, that just goes over the final days one more time. In case you didn't know what the final days actually were in the first place, if you weren't paying enough attention, this basically just kind of reiterates what that sentence said, just on the light section. Now, this is the bit that most people come here for. Here at the bottom, it just lists like a bunch of features. New jobs, new raids, level cap, new cities, new areas, new tribes, new threats, new dungeon, new high difficulty raid, alliance raid, then some other features, small scale PvP, Trust Ally, Residential District, Gold Saucer, Island Sanctuary Gear, Crafting, Data Center, and then Data Center Travel. So like all the general features. But they give us a little bit more insight into a few specific aspects as well. Endwalker brings the tale of Hydaelyn and Zodiark to a conclusion eons in the making. To unravel its mysteries and conquer its challenges will be no common feat. May these records of key figures, looming adversaries, and lands yet untraveled serve you well. So by lands untraveled, it means the zones. It's got an explanation of all the zones down at the bottom. And then just another thing. So there is also a story so far section. So if you are actually unfamiliar with Final Fantasy XIV's story, you've skipped the cutscenes, and you want as concise of an explanation, they do have one right here. This describes, again, the story of Endwalker. This is what we just read on the other page, pretty much. And then this is spoilers. We're not going to go into it too specifically, but you have A Realm Reborn, you have Heaven's Ward, you have Stormblood, and you have Shadowbringers. And then finally, Endwalker. This is, again, the exact same thing we just saw. So this is as concise of a reminder of what has happened so far as you can get. I would highly advise not relying solely on that, though. And please go enjoy the cutscenes for yourself, because you have quite the undertaking of cutscenes and moments that you definitely shouldn't miss out on before going into Endwalker, especially a lot of the Shadowbringers ones. Please don't skip over those. Then we have old Charlene here, ensconced in the lonely northern archipelago and ever blessed by the wise auspices of Thaleak. The gleaming white edifices of this city stand at the center of Charlean society. First among many dedicated to the pursuit of knowledge and scientific advancement is the Studium, the world's most prestigious place of learning. And I like how Labyrinthos is right next to it, because we already know. Deep below the streets of Old Charlean lies a vast subterranean environment created as a repository for tomes and treatises on every subject imaginable, gathered from all corners of the world. To protect the priceless and the irreplaceable, the climate of Labyrinthos is etherically regulated. So we originally assumed that Labyrinthos was actually some sort of like apocalypse bunker, in a sense, and while it could be doubling as that, it seems that more so it just has such valuable artifacts that they seek to protect it more than anything else. So I'm wondering if it ends up like still kind of doubling as that Fallout style bunker, but for now that we'll just go off what we have right here. Garlemald, this is just showing us the devastation that we've already been seeing. Despite being situated on the frozen plains of northern Ilsabard, the imperial capital overcame the natural disadvantages of its location and many a further obstacle facing the empire with the power of Magitech. The rise of the burgeoning industry spurred rapid urban development in recent decades until the sprawling metropolis was brought to its knees by civil war. Now, the once proud jewel of the empire is a sea of desolation. I almost said devastation just because I already said it once, and Gaius. They have Thavnair. In the bounty southeastern water lies the Isle of Thavnair, with tropical coastlines soon give way to dense rainforest, though the intense heat and sweltering humidity remains much the same. The region is known as a rich source of the magically infused stone giant skull. We've had giant skull weapons for quite some time in the game. We're well acquainted with the lore of Giant Skull, and the distinctive violet glow from its rocky outcrops lingers in the memories of visitors long after they depart its shores. And then we, of course, have Thavnair itself. In the bounty southeastern water lie the Isles of Thavnair with a... Well, I guess this is just... I just realized, I was like, wait a minute, that's the same description. It was just another screenshot. Yeah, I was looking for Radzat Hand, sorry. The bustling city of the near eastern Isle of Thavnair is renowned as a prosperous trading hub and the birthplace of alchemy. Over the course of its storied history, it has produced countless influential figures and ingenious creations that have since made their ways to distant shores. Perched atop a massive pillar of rock, its ornate buildings boast vibrant hues rivaled only by those of its locally produced textiles. So the birthplace of alchemy, which is not all too surprising given what we've known about Radzat Han before. And the things that have come out of there. We also have the Mare Lamentorum. Though its name may conjure images of briny deep, this region of the moon is awash with naught but arid basalt. It is far from devoid of interest, however, as the origin and purpose of its apparently artificial structures spotted on its surface have yet to be ascertained. There is one other zone they have showed us that isn't listed here, but they're refusing to give us details about it. This is very akin to what they did with the Tempest, where we didn't even actually see any sort of teaser for the Tempest before actually getting there in the story. I think there's a brief moment we see in the Tempest in the launch trailer for Shadowbringers, so I'm assuming that's as much as we'll get from that extra zone, which people are already speculating about like crazy. Then we have the new beast tribes. It's so bright. The Arca Sodara. That's going to take me so long to be able to pronounce it at a glance. Like other Matanga people, the Arca Sodara resemble the Great Merid both in appearance and brawn. They are indigenous to the Isle of Thavnair and founded the city-state of Radzat Han with the Aura and Hur migrants. Their bulky frames belly the deftness of Han, and their thirst for knowledge has led many to pursue mastery of the alchemic arts. So, yeah, they're, I mean, just like the rest of the lore with Radzat Han, they're alchemists. So, but they look strong. And I like that they kind of helped found Radzat Han, because a lot of the times these just get, beast tribes kind of don't get the same appreciation. I guess Shadowbringers kind of helped, I guess, fix that a little bit. But a lot of the times beast tribes are treated strictly as, like there's always like that opposing faction. And I'm not saying that won't happen here, but it's good to hear kind of just like a super positive and reinforced lore with the island that they've kind of just gotten along with the people who have come to the islands in the past, which makes sense for Thavnair, I suppose. Then you have the Loporrits. Yours in Myth tells of a curious wanderer known as Naming Way. Yeah, people were just calling these the Naming Ways for quite some time before we heard they were, I guess for the 5 minutes we didn't know they were called Loporrits. Descended from an unknown people that traveled to the realm from the moon. The Loporrits appear to have much in common with that being of legend, though questions regarding their current whereabouts and much else besides remain unanswered. So they are from the moon. So they are, just like in Final Fantasy IV, they are moon people. What that actually means is tough to tell, because what we know of the moon so far is that's where Zodiark is. But we don't know if it was there before Zodiark and he was locked inside of it, if the moon is kind of a Dalamud-esque sort of thing where it was made specifically for him. But the fact that they've been on the moon all this time, and it would imply that maybe this was unwillingly thrust upon them, the whole Prison of Zodiark thing. I'm curious to see how much of their history, because they might be from before the final days, technically. They might have been on the moon as a race from the days before, during the time of the ancients. It's very likely that they actually are. So I think we're going to learn a lot about the times before the final days from the Loporrits, or at least I'm hoping that we will. Now we do have Sage and Reaper. We're going to come back to that in a second, just because we have the male Viera section right here. Got the full artwork over here on the right, which you've seen before. And the section over here on the left is pretty much just a concise way of saying the same lore that was already present for the male Viera. There's a lot more to the lore from the male Viera than what is put here, but this is kind of the basis you need just to understand why they weren't in the game before, why they were not ever in any game before when it comes to Ivalice, and just to get you caught up into, you know, what you need to know about them in case that matters for your character creation anyway. Let's go up to Sage and get the lore on that. Sage, by the way, this is their job icon. We still don't have their three-letter shortened name, but I do have their job icon, and I like it. The nation of Charlene is the cradle of knowledge, and the studium its foremost institute of learning. Yet more so than its incomparable library and formidable assemblage of archons, this prestigious academy is famed for blending traditionally distinct fields to produce revolutionary new disciplines. Among these, perhaps the most distinguished is an altruistic art which draws upon the wisdom of etherology, sorcery, and medicine. Dubbed semantics, the art seeks to heal and protect by manipulating corporeal ether through the use of newliths, a flying array of foci. Practitioners are dedicated to the betterment of mankind, and for their wisdom and compassion eventually came to be known simply as sages. Well, that last part explains why Alphino becomes one, at least in terms of theme. But I do remember that they did say there was a point where they considered calling Sage chemist or something along those lines. They realized Sage, basically they came up with the entire concept first and then gave it a name afterwards, and the name was the last thing they had to decide on. And it looks, based on the lore, I mean, it's no wonder that they had a hard time figuring out exactly which thing they were going to call it. But yeah, so that's Sage. That's the lore of Sage. Let's go to Reaper. Reaper's lore I've read before this. It's funny because we have memed about this, and then it was the truth. The Garleans' forebears were once humble farmers who made their home among the sun-drenched fields of southern Ilsebard. That was until they were driven from this paradise by invaders wielding arcane magics. Forced north into the frigid mountains, the survivors sought a means to tap into the reservoir of ether otherwise closed to them. A daring few found their answers within the void, binding themselves to its creatures to gain verboten power. Power fed by the souls of the slain. Once more, they took up their sides, this time to reap a crimson heart. They are angry Garlean farmers. So first of all, that confirms that the entire job is Garlean-based. So we were wondering, because we did see the scythe that Xenos uses is very much of Garlean make. It even has a gun chamber in it, which is a very standard thing amongst the Garlean Empire's, arsenal of weapons. Now, all the other ones we've seen, including the one right here, do not have that. But we wanted to know where they came from. And it's actually, these are basically the only Garleans that have any ability to use magic, are the ones that tapped into the void and made a pact with a creature of the void in order to do it. So I actually think that's a super interesting way to give any sort of Garlean magic, any sort of explanation to a Garlean having access to magic, or even potentially having access to the echo of any kind outside of the artificial echo and that of the resonant. So on top of that, we still haven't seen what Xenos' void is. We don't think that he's an actual Reaper. We think more so he's just using a scythe. But I mean, we still got to find out what the what the origins of anima are. So you never know. It could be something a little interesting. It's hard to say. And I believe that's it for everything that's on the site so far. Going back to the main page, I'm pretty sure that it just says that the remaining section right here, new challenges, is coming soon. So we'll be able to do another update video on that at some point later in the future. But yeah, a little bit of lore insight into some of the different regions, into the new jobs. And of course, now we continue our long, long wait into November. A reminder that in September, we will be getting battle-related changes. They will be going through all of those, which means we will very likely learn about the majority of the new skills, at least at that point in their development. They'll still be subject to change before the official launch, as they always say. But we've got a lot of news coming up in the next several months to keep us occupied. But for now, we got to step away, maybe make a Male Vieira in the benchmark, and then find something else to do for a little bit. But with that, that's going to be a wrap for this video. Be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And stay tuned for anything on Final Fantasy XIV coming up. We'll also have some other recaps of older stuff that I'm going to be going over, plus some other ideas I have for YouTube videos to bide our time as we wait for Endwalker itself. So anyway, I'm going to get back to my Twitch stream. They've been sitting here watching me record videos back to back as opposed to actually being a broadcaster. But for those of you on YouTube, I'll see you on the next video. And until then, take care.